All right. Welcome, everyone, to our first webinar in our Road to the BOSA Digital webinar series. Betting on Sports America Digital is the leading dedicated sports betting conference in the U.S. that will be happening on December 1st and 2nd. In these challenging times of a pandemic, we've had to move the event from our physical location of the Meadowlands in New Jersey to a digital virtual event, but we are looking forward to gathering thought leaders in the industry and discussing great content and issues facing the industry. And as a preview of the event, we've got a really great webinar today. Betting brands equals good business for teams and venues. And I cannot think of a more esteemed folks to join us. We have Jim Van Stone, who is the President of Business Operations and Chief Commercial Officer for Monumental Sports and Entertainment. For those of you who are unaware, Monumental is the ownership group for the Washington Wizards and Capitals, and then also the Capital One Arena, which both teams play in. And I'll certainly let Jim get more into his personal background, but Monumental has been really in the forefront of embracing sports betting, both in their venues and through their partnerships. We have Eric Foote, Chief Commercial Officer for PointsBet. PointsBet has also been very aggressive in terms of their agreements in various legalized jurisdictions now as an operator with both NFL and NCAA teams specifically, and we will get into those details later. And then our third panelist is Pat Evans, a reporter from Front Office Sports, which is one of the leading sports betting news and events sites. So welcome all of you, and thanks for joining us today. I also want to give a quick call out for those in the U.S. at least. Today is Veterans Day, so I certainly want to give pause, and I'd be remiss if we did not thank those veterans who served us and gave us our freedom. And even in these crazy post-elections time, it's still a pretty good place to live with our freedoms and our democracy. So we certainly tip our proverbial hats to those veterans with us today. So having said that, to anyone attending, we do encourage you can submit questions as we go along on this webinar through the chat function of the platform. As a matter of housekeeping by design, this webinar is meant to be pretty informal and really foster discussion around the sponsorship and partnership subject. So by that, you're not going to see a deck of slides or presentations. So to that end, we do encourage participation for those listening and viewing us today from no matter where they are. So having said that, gentlemen, again, thank you for joining us. I'm going to start by asking you all kind of a group question, if you will. Anybody in marketing and in business, the partnership sponsorship side of things is nothing new. However, with sports betting brands coming into the market and then with teams themselves, it almost seems like a perfect alliance, right? That hasn't heretofore been seen because of the matching demographic. And Jim, I'll maybe start with you as a team operator. Sort of what's your perspective on that angle in terms of how these kind of partnerships can be a little different just because of that, perfect match demographic standpoint?
Well, and I appreciate you, Kevin, having us. And, it's a great opportunity to be with Pat and Eric. Both of them do phenomenal jobs. I'm really excited about Eric's new opportunity with NBC Sports. I think that partnership is fantastic. And Pat and his team do a wonderful job of covering us in the industry. From a Monumental standpoint, we look at sports betting as a perfect complement to what we do as an organization. We're a live events business. We're a content business. We're a culinary business. We're a merchandise business. The sports betting opportunity and what it allows us to do to engage with our fans and build deeper connections and really create new fans, we think is a transformational opportunity. So we've been very vocal from the very beginning, even prior to PASPA, about supporting the industry. And, I think one of the things that we found through all of our due diligence is that these sports betting operators are run by really, really smart people. And as we went through our process and finally selected William Hill as our partner at Capital One Arena, we were introduced to many people at a variety of different organizations that were really, really smart at what they were doing. And, what I found to be very appealing was that we're all kind of synergized in terms of, building this as a future opportunity and stuff like that. I think we're in the early stages. I think there's probably certainly a long way to go. But I think there is a great complement for us to work together. And I think from a sponsorship standpoint, an operating rights standpoint, an association standpoint, I think we bring great value to a lot of the sports betting operators.
And then Eric, from your side as an operator, just talk a little bit about what you're able to bring to the table. Again, as Jim alluded to, we are certainly still in the early stages of this industry in the U.S. So what that looks like from your guys' side.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks for having us, first of all, and Jim and Patrick, thanks for joining. I think there's a variety of things that we're looking at when we consider these team partnerships or league partnerships or media partnerships. First and foremost for PointsBet, we're trying to build a brand. So how do we build brand trust and credibility? Being an Australian-based company that was set up, roughly 5 years ago, and coming to the U.S., entering New Jersey with really no brand, and being quite successful with market share there and starting to grow to more and more states. So first and foremost is making sure the spend and the allocation of the dollars are contributed to states that we are in or states that we are going to in the near future. Again, that brand trust and credibility is probably priority number one. Number two is how do we get acquisition? It's a very competitive market, as everyone on the webinar is aware of, but how do we get direct acquisition? How do we encompass verified signups, first-time depositors, first-time bettors? So aligning with a professional sports organization or a professional sports league, or in our case, a college, we feel that really resonates and hits home. And then thirdly, how do we entertain our clients? So they could be VIPs, they could be employees of PointsBet. We're headquartered in Denver. Our Kroenke deal resonates quite well with what we're building here in Denver, being kind of a tech hub for organization. But there's a variety of assets that we look at and a lot of different dynamics of the deal. We've got to make sure they fit. We've looked at a lot of opportunities so far over the past few years, and we've turned down many, but we've selected the few that you've seen out in the marketplace.
Pat, talk a little bit about, from your perspective as an analyst for the overall industry in sports business. Obviously during the pandemic, we saw marketing spend, shrink. You certainly saw, as these guys can attest, revenue, the ticket revenue that Monumental's getting is non-existent right now. So what sort of opportunity exists there when you have a burgeoning industry like sports betting when compared to the overall sponsorship partnership agreement where those budgets might be shrinking?
Well, first, thanks for having me, Kevin. And I do have to say, just Eric and Jim have been two of the fun people to watch. I guess Monumental and PointsBet being two of the fun companies to watch in this industry right now. But yeah, I mean, this is a whole new revenue stream for so many of these teams. And I think, going to what they said, it's still so early that we're seeing the big pillars like NBC pop off and things you expect to eventually go. But then again, PointsBet, to have Colorado be a partner, this industry is so young and it's just over from being a taboo sort of thing. And now you're breaking down other taboo, like college betting. I'm blanking on the word, but the barrier's fallen down, and I think the teams are going to continue to find different ways to monetize it, whether it's a team like the Broncos that has 3 partners, or a team like Monumental having one, and then finding different ways to activate it, like sports books in the venues, or monetizing the studios and the content around that. There's certainly many different ways that we haven't even scratched the surface yet to see really how it all comes to fruition.
Yeah. And guys, this is a perfect segue into something else I want to talk about that's been alluded to already, the broadcast side of things in terms of what can be brought to the table, both integrating within a traditional broadcast, whether that's the PointsBet NBC deal, or Jim, what you guys have done with your alternative broadcast. So let's talk a little bit about, is it something that might be seen as a fragmented thing, but yet you're still able to integrate and target those sports bettors within that broadcast and what that potentially could mean for you guys. Jim, if you want to take that one.
Yeah. So just sharing with everyone. So we have a great partnership with NBC Sports Washington. As many of you know, with the regionals, they have multiple channels in the marketplace, especially if we have conflicts with the Wizards and the Capitals playing at the same time. So we did a great partnership with the group at NBC Sports Washington, and we actually put a predicted game skin on the second channel and really had it look like a betting channel from that standpoint. It was free to play. It was a great opportunity. I think one of the things that we were really pleased about is that we didn't see any drop in ratings from our primary channel to the secondary channel. So we thought it was a great engagement opportunity. We thought it was also a fantastic platform to educate people on the opportunity. And I think with this being such a new industry and the teams and the organizations that we've talked to, I think the leagues also, I think the operators, education is a big part of what they want to do to continue to build this industry. So for us, it was a really great test. I think we're going to do more games in that platform as we move forward. And, I think certainly NBC with their relationship with Eric and the team at PointsBet, I think is going to do a fantastic job of elevating. I got to tell you, I'm a huge Premier League fan. And the week after, I think the announcement with PointsBet and NBC, I saw the Premier League was promoting the PointsBet platform. So it was just a fantastic opportunity. I think we have a long way to go, but I think there's certainly a lot of focus on the educational piece.
Yeah, and Eric talked about, in general, the deal that you guys have with NBC, but also how much of that will be centered around educating folks because it is such a burgeoning industry here in the U.S.
Yeah, I could talk for 3 hours on the NBC deal, and would love to, but I'll try to keep it at a minimum. I think as we looked at the landscape and looked at the right media partner for PointsBet, what stood out with Comcast and NBCU were a variety of things. One was the team and the people. They ran their process internally and built build that trust and credibility from day one throughout the 6 to 9 month process that we're involved. But you look at what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to accomplish diversity, and what they bring from a linear and a digital perspective, we believe is second to none. On the linear side, being able to target all the way down to a specific neighborhood through Comcast and their 66 markets they're in, all the way up the spectrum to local O&O, Telemundo, the RSNs that Jim mentioned. We're quite, excited about all the RSNs. Some will resonate quicker than others due to legalization of sports betting. But then even up into the national broadcast with the Golf Channel, the cable channel, and then NBC specifically. Then you flip all the way back to the digital component. The predictor platform they've built over the past few years, we think is phenomenal. That will be our free-to-play strategy. That is our free-to-play strategy. So we will be investing hand in hand with NBC to expand that above the 4 games that are offered into multiple games and multiple sports. We see quite a crossover of the free-to-play into a pure-play sports betting pure-play sports bettor into a first-time bettor. And then you think of Golf Now. You think of Roto World. I could go on and on about the assets. We really like that. We also like the fact that this builds our database instantly and segments it on a state by state. We're currently live in, I need to count again, 4 states, soon to be 5, soon to be 6, and that will continue to grow in 2021. But again, we've got to target a variety of demo. It could be, we attract a very premium bettor with our points betting product and other things that we offer. But we also know we've got to hit home that kind of social bettor or that new bettor, Kevin, that you mentioned. So quite a lot of marketing tactics done by PointsBet to make sure we attract different types of bettors. And we're very confident in the NBC deal and the assets they present to bring those to the forefront for PointsBet.
And Patrick, again, from your perspective of the 30,000-foot view of overseeing or analyzing everything, I think I read this maybe in the last week or so, some interesting tidbits from the NFL's perspective of, they certainly are more willing to embrace this, right, than they would have been, heck, a year or 2 ago, much less 10 years ago. But they also have data that shows 20% of their fans are, I don't know if despise is the right word, but are adamantly opposed to sports betting. So they have to walk that fine line, right, of embracing it, but yet not turning off a segment of their fan base as well that is just so turned off by sports betting. So, what do you see from that perspective, from the league side of both integrating, but yet not turning, a segment of their fan base off?
I hadn't seen that stat, so I'll have to go find that, because I feel like right now you're walking a fine line with pretty much anything, and you're gonna make people mad some way or the other. So I feel like not embracing sports betting will make people mad too, or at least turn engagement off, which I think is where this is so big right now. Is you're seeing broadcast ratings crater, and how much of that is there were so many sports at one time, how much of that is just the streaming platforms, how much of that is social justice awareness, whatever, however many things have been blamed. But when you start doing the integrating sports betting odds or just whatever you want to integrate into broadcast, I think that starts to provide a second screen opportunity that takes, like, if you're just watching TV and you've got Twitter up or whatever, you're distracted from it. And, we've seen plenty of studies and demographic info saying that younger audiences don't like sports as much as the older audiences. And I think a lot of that has to do with how much they're on their phone and not actually watching sports or just doing other things. So I think the more you kind of build a whole ecosystem and keep people on their, then you're opening a can of worms too, of encouraging people to bet too much. But, keeping that back and forth and keeping people engaged in one thing, I think that's an opportunity there.
Yep. Which is another great segue into a question for Jim, which before we get to that, though, I think we have a more pressing question for you, Jim, based on your earlier comments. So who do you support in the Premier League?
I'm a Manchester United fan, so I guess, we're coming back. We've had a slow start to the season and stuff like that, but, I think we'll be okay in the long run.
I'm sure that can open up some trash talking via the chat now. And for the record, I'm an Arsenal fan, so
okay.
But let's talk about the demographic that Patrick just alluded to. Right, there's ample data that shows younger folks are not engaged with sports in general, right, as they were maybe from previous generations. But of course, the flip side is sports betting could potentially bring that in. And I know the hot button phrase for you guys is fan engagement. So talk a little bit about whether that's in venue, whether that's through digital channel, research and marketing that you can do, what that represents to you guys from that fan engagement standpoint, and potentially bringing in that younger demographic that seems to be so key right now.
Yeah, I would say we've certainly first and foremost look at ourselves as a media company. The teams are our content, our venues are content, but we are really truly focused on media. We think there's huge opportunities on that front. We've put a lot of investment in a fully operational productions organization that we have as part of Monumental. We focus on both short form and long form content. We created an OTT platform in Monumental Sports Network several years back. So we really think that short form and long form content, may be a great alternative to continue to educate ourselves and to create new audiences from that standpoint. It's interesting when I take a look at our sports betting deal, that we have with William Hill. In the district, the sports venues are basically what they call Class A license operators. So you can have a bricks and mortar sports book tied into the building. So we've got these beautiful billion-dollar buildings that we have around the country and arenas. We open them an hour before the game begins, and we close them an hour afterwards. We think that we can extend the hours to the arena, driving more people down. So that's a new audience of people that can come in and experience it. We feel like we've got the ability to build third-party events with William Hill on a lot of dark days. We only do 230 events a year at the arena itself, so there's really great opportunity of, co-promoting some future events that we can do together that will help us bring in a new demographic of people. And one of the things that we like about the 30,000 square foot sports book that we're doing in conjunction with William Hill is that we've created a broadcast studio within the space itself. So that will allow us to really create some unique content opportunities across the board. So I think we're looking at this opportunity, really from a content play for us, more so than anything. I mean, we can't share in the sports betting, profitability, from that standpoint, because we own the teams, but there's a lot of ancillary opportunities that we have to both grow our brands and also create some additional revenues. And hopefully, at the end of the day, capture, maybe a segment of the audience that is not engaged with our products and organization.
And Eric, you alluded to that too with the experimental side. These partnerships can really open up things again when you're typically a sports bettor is going to be a fan of the team, right? That allows entryway into some things that maybe would not be afforded to other types of agreements.
Yeah, there's no question, that brand trust and credibility. And as we believe, as you partner with a team, that will increase that gross gaming revenue that fans bet on that specific team or within the sport. So let's take the KSE deal with the Denver Nuggets. We're very optimistic that those fans inside the state of Colorado, or hell, other states that we're involved in, will bet more on the Nuggets and bet more on the NBA. So there's the association that we like. We're really hitting that fan base specifically. And back to kind of what Jim said earlier, I don't know who coined the phrase wagertainment, but as we speak to our media partner NBC, or as we speak to the teams, we're always looking at trying to, I would say, walk the line a little bit. We know the leagues have certain rules and regulations, and we follow those. We continue to build those relationships with the leagues, with the teams, and our media partner. But you'll see a lot more from PointsBet and NBC on in-game integrations across the regional sports networks, whether that's the pregame, the in-game, the post-game. There's a variety of things that we really want to do. And I'll point out, an example that we've started to do this year on the RSNs, specifically in Chicago with our launch in Illinois, was our name a bet feature that allows, if there's not a market offered by PointsBet, allows that consumer or the fan to tweet in a bet that he or she would like to see. And because we own our technology and handle our trading, we will trade that. We will post it on our app in a matter of minutes. And then that talent on the RSN can speak to that bet type or that name a bet throughout the broadcast. So again, we're working through this with the RSNs, with NBC, and also with the various teams in the leagues. But again, we want to really enforce that wagertainment to keep people's butts in the seats or on the couch in this case throughout the course of the game.
Yeah, and Pat, I'm sure that's a trend you're seeing again nationwide, right? I think the difference being what a league can do, let's say like the NFL, on a national broadcast versus a regional broadcast, right?
Yeah. And I think there's a couple things I wanted to hit on as I was listening to their answers and stuff. But one is just going back to your original question of demographics is like, I'm watching, again, the ratings of general cable go down, the rise of all these, TikTok and all that. As a 30-year-old, I just turned 31 on Monday, so I guess I'm 31 now, so I'm getting older. But like, I still feel young. But like, I teach a class at UNLV, and I think that I'm hip to what's going on, and I have no idea how they consume media. And they're, some of them are 8 years younger than me, others are 10, 12 years younger than me, but I have no idea. And every time I teach a class and I ask them how they're consuming whatever they're consuming, and it's just, I'm like, well, I don't know what that is. What? and so I think again, it's all experimentation. It feels like, and I hope, everybody has people on their staffs that are young, or at least have a better idea of it than me, just looking at it from a 30,000 foot view. But I think the demographic switch is very fascinating to me, and it'll be interesting to keep that going. But then going to the in-venue sports books and stuff like that, I think, I was doing a story a couple weeks ago where a colleague and I kind of looked at suites and what those are doing right now with, very few, if any, fans in the building. And I ended up talking to some ticket industry professionals, and I don't know how this works in rules and regulations and what have you, but he certainly thinks in the long run, stadiums are going to be more entertainment, like Top Golf and Dave & Buster's. Wagertainment would be great, like, sports venues and sports books in venues. And then he's like, and imagine if you start offering people, if they put a $50 bet or a $20 bet and you give them free access to the game and they come in and spend money. Again, I don't know how that works on the bottom line for somebody like Jim, but I think that's a fascinating idea of how these venues, how sports venues in general change as the demographics change and their interests change, but it's still an event to go to. I think that's a really interesting storyline to follow in the next, 20 years.
Jim, any thoughts on that?
I think what Pat was saying is we think with the building itself, we have a fully engaged opportunity to really grow our ancillary revenues as an organization, whether it's in the culinary side of what we do, whether it's in the retail side, whether it's in creating new events with William Hill. I mean, we're talking about doing boxing pay-per-views, MMA pay-per-views. Maybe there's a Saturday and Sunday, Premier League brunch that we do, and we go from the 30,000 square foot sportsbook and flex into the arena. I mean, we've got probably the most immersive technologies in any arena in the country, but every building has these beautiful Jumbotron scoreboards, and it is an enormous TV. And if you allow a suite holder to come in and watch boxing or an MMA pay-per-view, there's ancillary opportunities that we can do and generate revenues for ourselves. So we see this as really a compelling opportunity to almost create another business unit for us. So I'm really excited about the opportunity. I mean, we've been really very focused, and I think we're fortunate in the district based on our rules and regulations that allows us to have a bricks and mortar sports book. We worked very efficiently with the leagues from the operational side and what we're looking to do. And I think we're on the early stages of really creating a great opportunity. I mean, you look at our building, we were the 6th busiest building in the country in Q1 from a ticket sales standpoint, but we're not open every single night, or we're not open, 20 hours a day. So if there's ways of us creating a compelling content that drives more, traffic into the building, it's great for our sponsors. It's new ticketing revenues that we could potentially look at. It's culinary revenue, retail revenue. So, I think sports betting really fits in very, very well for us in terms of being able to maximize our facilities down the line.
And it's an interesting cross-section of, as mobile penetration increases, right? And so anybody can make a bet anywhere. I do agree with you. Even maybe the pandemic will even fuel this more. Once it's safe to do so, I think people, while they'll have the ability potentially to easily bet on their phones, still will want that social interaction to be at I think an MMA or boxing fight or any big game, right? To be in a venue where they're watching it, but yet still having that immersive experience with those around them will be a major draw. So that's a very good point. Eric, I want to switch gears slightly. I'm not asking you to give us trade secrets or the nitty gritty of your actual contracts, but you guys certainly turn heads with the agreement with the University of Colorado. So just talk a little bit about the differences between a deal with an institution that's at the NCAA level versus a deal like the Denver Broncos. How did that differ? What, I'm sure as a company, your goals and aspirations at the end of the day for the agreement might be the same, but what did that process look like? How did it differ? What sort of things did you have to wade through at that level versus a pro level with the Broncos?
Yep, I knew this question would come. So, first, thanks to Pat for covering this so closely, and the earned media that we've, received. Quite outstanding. So we continue to answer questions, and glad you brought it up. I think this was something we had our eye on from day one when we realized we were moving our headquarters in the U.S. To Denver, Colorado, taking an understanding and knowing what University of Colorado Boulder offers. One, from a sports perspective, an athletic department, but secondly, just the university and the rich talent. We're building, just opened a brand new office 2 weeks ago, currently not open, but it will thrive soon in 2021. We're optimistic. We'll seat up to 250 individuals, a very large focus on product and technology because we own that front to back. But having that pipeline not only into the current student athletes, but also into the larger student body. And by pipeline, I mean more from a learning career development. So a large portion of our investment there goes towards that learning career development program. Also goes to guest lecturing and speaking at the engineering school, the business school. Also goes to career fairs for HR and recruiting teams. So there's a clear focus on building our pipeline for recruitment of those, very talented as they kind of go through the CU undergraduate and graduate. See, that was first and foremost. Secondly, responsible gaming had to be at the forefront of the deal, and so there's plenty of checks and balances in the deal that allow for that. And then, you mentioned about the process. On our end, we worked very closely with the athletic department, directly with Rick George, the athletic director, Lance Gerlach, who's the head of the Buff Club, and then even the university, getting the proper approvals through the athletic department, through the university. And then the athletic department worked directly with the Pac-12 and the NCAA. That was their responsibility. On our side, it was more so speaking with the AGA, speaking to CODOG, Colorado Department of Gaming. We understood there was a long process here, and we checked those boxes along the way. And then as we look at the marketing component of it, the focus is not on the student athlete, on marketing to that student athlete or to the students. It's on that deep alumni base within the state of Colorado or in other states that we may be live or active. We also are looking at kind of from a TV perspective, what's the branding at Folsom Field for football or the CU Event Center for men's basketball? How do we start building that brand in Colorado? We're set to launch here in November. We have not launched yet, but we'll make, we think, a very large splash with our CU deal and with the KSE deal, and aggregating those relationships and those assets to being kind of a market leader here in the state of Colorado. So again, the deal we thought was quite unique, had to be approached a certain way. We do feel open up other opportunities for other Division I athletic departments to partner in this space, and we've been approached by probably a half dozen or a dozen in the weeks following the deal to learn more about what we've done.
Patrick, what is that? It may be an obvious question, but I think it's one worth asking. What does that signify to you? And from your perspective, again, we alluded to how quickly the NFL, specifically just because they were so adamantly opposed to this industry for so long, along with, of course, the NBA and the NHL were quick to embrace it. But, having that shift, putting the NCAA into that stable of green lighting agreements like that, sort of what does that signify from your perspective on these partnerships?
Probably a flood of them coming soon. Probably the bigger universities will be on it first, I'm sure, or smaller ones. I don't know. But I'm sure there's going to be plenty coming down the pipeline real quick.
Yeah, I think that's a safe assessment. We did get a really good question from one of the audience members. So I did want to bring this up, and maybe it's something all three of you can address. I'm not sure. There's no secret that sports betting has been a thing of the past in the U.S., right? It's whether it was the corner bookie back in the 70s and 80s onto the offshore guys of the early part of this century, right? And they're still around, right? And they're around for a reason, because they've acquired a good customer base and they've taken care of their customers. I think the perception of, they're shady operators and you're not going to get paid is a thing of the past, because if they weren't paying customers, they wouldn't still be around. So the question becomes this, is there a component of these partnerships and agreements that you're looking to maybe target those kinds of consumers that have been dealing with offshore operators for some time, or is that just a natural part of the market cycle when you're going into regulated markets where maybe there had been unregulated activity previously? I don't know who wants to take that first, but I'll throw that to all three of you.
I'm happy to take it. Jim. I'm happy to start real quick. I think, folks ask who we're competing against, and obviously there's a lot of operators here in the U.S. that are competing in a variety of states. But I think we like to say we're competing with the offshore. Can we bring a point or 2 points from the offshore back into the U.S.? And I think that's done in a variety of ways. Number one is trust and credibility from a deposit and withdrawal. Those have to be done to perfection and done quickly. Whether it's working with now PayPal or Venmo, you're seeing a lot of other banks open up. So we're going to continue to see the evolution from a payment and withdrawal. And it's something we're very close on, and we want that to be front and center of having the best customer experience. I think number two is, what is our customer support team? Whether that's done through email or text or phone, we're extremely hands-on with our clients, and that builds that trust and credibility with our consumer. And then lastly, you think of the VIPs. Again, all books want to have the top VIPs, wagering at an extremely high level, winning, some losing. At the end of the day, we're hopeful they'll be on the losing side from our standpoint. But we've got to treat that customer with kind of that white glove approach. So there's a variety of things we do with our VIP customer service team to accommodate those bettors. So those are three examples of how to start winning individuals from the black market, or from utilizing their neighbor on the back of a napkin, kind of a bookie situation. So we're very sensitive to bringing that base over to the U.S.
I would say from our standpoint, Kevin, we did a lot of research going into the opportunity, and we really looked at our Capitals and Wizards season ticket base from an example, and we found that our fans were 2 times more likely to actually want to place a bet at a legitimate bookmaker than the black market. So we felt really, really strong about that. I think we were 67% more likely to have confidence and want to bet on a mobile platform that they trust, and has really good technology. And that's what these operations, really have. And then, I think to Eric's point, I think there was big numbers that we looked at. We were 34% more likely to have clients that would bet a minimum of $500. So we felt like it was a really good audience. And, one of the things is we did from a Monumental standpoint, we met, I think, legitimately with 14 different organizations, from casino operators to sports bookmakers to, the daily fantasy companies, when we selected William Hill. And every one of those companies, the first thing that they talked to us about was safe gaming. And we also did a partnership with the American Gaming Association. So I think the comfort level is people want to go to a source that's trusted, and these operators are the best in the business. So I feel like that transition is going to happen very, very quickly. And then to Eric's point, associating with sports teams and properties, that association brings legitimacy. And I look at ourselves, and Eric talked about customer acquisition. We have 3 million people in our database in the greater Washington region. That is a great opportunity, for a partner of ours from an acquisition standpoint. Our customers trust us, and they're probably going to be more likely, as we all know, to trust people that we partner with from a safe and hopefully best result standpoint.
Which also goes right into that fan engagement piece that we talked about earlier, right? You have the branding and the relationship, so those fans are going to have that buy-in directly with you, knowing that your partners are going to be more legit. Pat, we still see in jurisdictions, specifically New Jersey is one, where you still have a great deal of advertisement for the, let's call it, the unregulated operators, which certainly clouds the market from a consumer standpoint, right? Do they know who's regulated and who's unregulated? So, what's your perspective in that, in terms of how that can be cleared up from whether it's regulation or through these legitimate partnerships?
Well, I don't want to get into the regulation parts of it, but the legitimacy thing is very important, I think, to the partnerships for most Americans. Most Americans are just now starting to get familiar with betting companies, betting industries. It's interesting when you have other publications, like big public, like the New York Times, writing about BOSA. That's, troubling, I think, in a lot of ways, to that confusion factor. But I don't know. I think, to Jim's point, I think as people get more familiar with what is legal, and the sponsorship deals are huge to that, it will quickly shift. But I think a lot of the bettors who have been betting overseas, offshore, have brand loyalty to those books for some reason. Just because they've been using them, but also, they're looking for better prices. Bettors are smart. Bettors shop around quite a bit, so that I think the sports books or the operators partnering with teams will help get the fan loyalty. But then I think for some people, they just like to do bad things, so they'll keep betting offshore.
Let's talk about in-game betting a bit. That's certainly a trend that is much more mature in the European market. Some of that goes to the fact that European football lends itself a little more to that. And of course, too, when we say in-game betting, I think we're talking about, second half or quarter odds, not necessarily is this next play going to be a run or a pass or whatever. But there's opportunities, Jim, for folks like you with that alternative broadcast. And then Eric, certainly as an operator, technology provider, you can do that on a larger scale too, just whether that's on a website or on a mobile application, right? So talk a little bit about just your guys' perspective on where we are now, where you potentially see that going, and the difference between, Jim, somebody like you guys, where it could be through an official sort of in-game perspective versus just a generic platform.
Well, I would say from our standpoint, when you take a look at, say, the venue piece of it, it's going to be critical for us that we really need to make sure all of our buildings are as equipped as it could be. 5G is going to be critical. Not having any latency issues, it is going to be really, really important to allow us to do more in-game. And one of the things that is going to be unique about our partnership with William Hill is they are the exclusive mobile provider within a 2-block radius of the arena. So, from our standpoint, if we really want to amplify this, we need to make sure that people can get, the connection and the connectivity that's going to be critical from that standpoint. I look at it as an incredible opportunity. I don't know what the landscape is yet in the NBA and NHL, but I look at baseball. You can say within a baseball game with 9 innings and a top half and a bottom half, that's 18 unique betting opportunities within a baseball game. So there's plenty of opportunities I think that we can uncover as we move forward, both on the NBA and the NHL side. But I think that's going to be a really great engagement opportunity, from that standpoint. I find that to be fabulous content too. So, from our standpoint, how can we tell that story and, share with it? I think it's got some really great amplification.
And to revisit another theme from earlier, I think you're spot on with baseball, and we know that sport is bleeding the younger they're losing that younger demographic every year. So that could be a saving grace for them. Eric, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll speak to it from an operator standpoint. In-play betting is everything. It's growing. It's growing for us considerably month over month. It'll continue to. We're still behind where Europe is at, but I think we're pretty bullish that once the market matures here in the U.S., that 3/4 of betting is done on in-play, and that micro betting, that quick dopamine hit that a bettor wants to have with instant gratification, win or loss. The more bet types, the more bets going on. Obviously the best for all involved from an operator standpoint. You're successful there by product, and we think product's going to win in the long run. Marketing is very important, getting out of the gate and building that database. But who has the best product and why over the course of the next 3 to 5 to 10 years? So we've really invested in our technology and owning that, as I've mentioned, kind of front to back. And then, the data providers. There's a lot of data providers out there, and having the right data provider or multiple data providers to make sure you're receiving that data in a millisecond, that it is spot on so you can offer that micro betting. And then lastly, you're seeing some operators, we're following suit and doing the same right now from our product standpoint, is that live streaming opportunity. Having truly live streaming that can mirror the proper data so that consumer can view that and bet simultaneously. And again, the large sports, the sports that most are familiar with, obviously, but secondly, what we saw during COVID, early back in March with table tennis that everyone's been talking about, or how bullish we are on tennis. And we've made a significant investment with the PGA Tour. I think golf is a sport that's growing. The handle's still relatively low compared to other key sports, but with what they are doing in the gambling front, number one, number two, what the data that IMG Arena is spitting out on a shot by shot, closest to the pin within a group. And then, with our NBC partnership with all the golf assets on linear and digital, we're really bullish on where golf can go for PointsBet from an in-play micro betting perspective over the next few years.
Yeah, and I know NASCAR fits into that as well. You think about every lap of a race, the things that you can bet on, all those micro betting actions, and then, of course, integrating that into a broadcast, which they've already done a great job with the technology integration from what, if you want to listen into the pit crews and all that kind of stuff. So it's real easy to see that added layer being added to a thing like that. Pat, your perspective and thoughts on that?
To everything, it'll keep people glued to their latency aside. If you're betting every at bat of a baseball game, your fan is way more engaged than if they're just listening to the baseball game while they work. Same thing with golf. And, I'm less likely to take a nap on Saturday during the Masters if I'm betting on each hole, So I think that's the huge thing, is that ecosystem of engagement and betting.
Here's another really good question from one of the attendees regarding the CPA agreements that many operators, and I guess Jim alluded to it, some of the team ownership groups can't necessarily do that. But, we're seeing deals that are pretty high CPAs, at least when you compare them to the cost per acquisition that you're seeing in the European model. So maybe, Eric, this is a question you can answer. Obviously, the industry is in a growth period, right, as new jurisdictions ramp up. So do you think this is a longer-term trend that, as we're now with the North Dakota, Louisiana, and Maryland that passed bills last week on the election, so we're now at 24 states plus DC, so we're nearly half the country, and I think most people feel in another 2 to 3 years you'll basically have 40 plus states. So do you see that kind of going at that rate until we get to that point, or is it something that will level off? Maybe we get into more of a rev share agreement on the acquisition side, or what's your perspective on that from a partnership standpoint?
It's a great question. We treat each state's its own business unit. In each state, we look at our quantitative team. We'll look at the analysis on a CPA. Each state's going to have a different CPA due to where they're at in the maturity of that state. So, yes, when states first go, that CPA, that race to acquire a customer is quite aggressive. And so we see higher CPAs. But I think as we think about these partnerships that we're talking about today with teams, with leagues, with the media companies, the end goal here is to reduce that CPA and acquire the customer more efficiently. So there's a variety of techniques that we are doing or other operators are doing to reduce that CPA. I'd also want to bring up, opportunities with team deals to, again, allow them to have, quote, skin in the game. So again, it doesn't have to be based on the handle or an individual, how much they're betting or how much they're depositing. But if a team can drive a verified sign up to PointsBet, we're allowed to pay them. We can pay them a VIG, if you want to call it a VIG, but a CPA payment to help drive users back to download and verify and sign up at PointsBet. So again, there's ways to construct deals that follow the rules and regulations, whether it's in a state with the governing body or with the leagues, the professional leagues. And then the last thing I'd probably mention here is, understanding the lifetime value of a client. So that's very important for us as we look at that and compare that to the CPA. We're seeing online casino, bear its head and be approved, whether it's in New Jersey. Michigan will be on the starting line with online casino. We have built our own online casino product and we'll debut that in Michigan, most likely in Q1. But we're also seeing other states take a hard look at online casino to kind of mirror and complement the online sports betting. And again, it's only going to create more dollars, more tax dollars for the state. It's going to create more efficiencies for the operators and give that individual more to do on their mobile device as they're in. If there's a night where there's not a game, for instance, or a game they want to bet, or if COVID happens to kick back up and sports are shut down, it creates that opportunity for our customer to be engaged 365, 24/7. So again, there's a lot of factors that go into the CPA modeling, but that's a great question.
Yeah. And Jim, we have I think another good question geared more towards you. Obviously, teams have to, in this day and age, create great content, whether that's social and digital, across channels, that owned, earned, and paid kind of mix of content. You guys are no different than that. But the question really is, where do you see the betting content kind of entering into that mix, or is that something that you would typically leave up to your partner?
I think we'll do it in collaboration. I mean, especially on our situation, because we have the exclusive deal with William Hill. So, I think certainly distribution is going to be critical and important to get that information out there and that content from that standpoint. But, there's certainly a lot of great social platforms that we can use to elevate it. I think, also potentially partnering on, creating some unique channel opportunities, I think could be a really, really good situation from that standpoint. So, I think there's a need, and I think there's a really desire to have this content. And, I think it's going to take probably a variety of different shapes and forms as we move forward. And, the one thing that, I did want to mention, Kevin, and I know Eric believes this too, and the fact that if you have a good partnership with an organization, I mean, you're going to evolve that partnership, and it's going to continue to grow and move in a lot of different directions. And, in the early stages, I think where you're seeing right now, certainly, that brand exposure is going to be important. But I think, more as the sponsorship matures, I mean, it's going to be more based on, ROI and activation. And I think we all get that. And if we're good partners together, we're going to allow our partnerships to evolve, from that standpoint. So, and I see content as probably the one piece that's really going to continue to evolve. And, I think we are in such an early stage of this from a comfort level standpoint. I mean, it's really hard to be first, so, being the first one to do it, I mean, you're certainly exposed, and, you go through a variety of trials and tribulations. But I think as you get, more up and running and established, then I think things are going to be looser. So I see the content opportunities really being endless in this space. And, especially when we're talking, the in-play opportunities within game betting, I think that could be really, really unique. So I think if we're good partners, we're going to continue to grow and evolve as we move forward.
Patrick, we talked a lot about traditional media partnerships, obviously PointsBet and NBC and the regional sports networks. But we also saw Penn National with their partnership with Barstool, who, I will call them non-traditional just because they're not one of the traditional broadcasters, but certainly their size and scope. Again, how do you feel from your perspective that what that signifies for non-traditional media partners out there? We've seen Bleacher Report again with Turner. So, what does that look like from your perspective?
Well, I think at least to start, I mean, the Penn National, acquiring a big piece of Barstool, that was a huge, I think, acquisition play, it seemed like, because I mean, anything Barstool does has a huge following, and it's incredible to watch. Like, however you feel, they're very, divisive in how people feel about them, but people follow them, and the influencers within that company, especially Dave Portnoy. So whatever they do, they just have their huge, I think, I don't even remember what their reach is, their monthly reach or whatever, but it's a huge amount. And a huge portion of them say they like betting. So that was huge. Then you look at FanDuel and Pat McAfee. I mean, same sort of deal. You've got these dedicated listeners of his show that will bet on FanDuel just because he says so. And so I think those, like, and again, going back to my talk or my remark about kind of the young people and me not having any idea how they work despite being young, they follow these influencers like crazy. Like, they're dedicated to these people more so than I am to say CBS or Fox or NBC. No offense to PointsBet. There's still, those pillars had to fall. But these are the ways to get the younger people, I think. But again, I have no idea. So, but it seems like that's the way forward.
Absolutely. I think everyone would agree with you there that that's certainly the media consumption is different than what we grew up on or are used to. So those folks that can get ahead of that and figure it out are going to be in a much better position. Okay, we're coming up about 5 minutes to go here. I do have a couple questions. If we don't get to them all, that's fine. And I would encourage anybody to chat with one. But I wanted to just go around with the panel here now in the closing minutes and Jim, I'll start with you. Big picture, not just where you see this going in 2 to 3 years, because I think that's an easy thing to say, but in terms of your priorities in your role for Monumental and Eric with PointsBet, what, and again, not asking for trade secrets, but just big picture, and let's assume too that, we first of all know who our president is and we have a smooth transition there. And the pandemic is behind us. Where do your priorities and focus lie then?
I think from an arena operator standpoint, and this is why we're so bullish on the bricks and mortar opportunity, is we anticipate that the William Hill Sportsbook, with the 30,000 square foot and the lounges that we have and being operational 365 days a year, is going to build an audience of maybe 1 million more visits to our sports and entertainment complex on an annual basis. So my focus and our focus as an organization standpoint is certainly going to be on the experiential piece of what our partnership will drive. And, I think we're really bullish that it can help in a variety of different, revenue streams that we have, whether it's the ticketing side, whether it's the premium side, whether it's the event side, it could be, the food and beverage, it could be the retail side. So, for us, it's really going to make sure that we focus on the experiential side. We're going to leave the sports betting platform and direction to our experts at William Hill. I mean, they've got a rich history in retail sports betting, and, they're a powerhouse when it comes to that. And, what I'm hopeful for and what we see in the district, and we're already seeing some movement in Maryland with that getting approved last week, is, more opportunities on the mobile footprint. I think that would really be fantastic. What I hope happens from an industry standpoint, I hope for Eric, because if not, I'm sure he'll be losing his hair. When you've got 50 different states and jurisdictions with all different rules and regulations, it's got to be a bear to manage from that standpoint. So I hope as we all get more mature in the industry, there's more opportunities that open up. And I'm hopeful that every NBA and NHL arena has a bricks and mortar sports book that's going to be a part of it, because I think it's really going to help the business tremendously from that standpoint.
Before I hand it off to Eric, that is one question I did want to ask you, again, because you guys are in, I would say, forward-leaning leagues. How much of your time, or do you get solicited from other ownership groups in either the NBA or NHL asking for your advice or guidance on how to integrate if they're in a regulated state or soon-to-be regulated state?
We do. I mean, I would say the leagues, both on the NBA and NHL side, have really best practice groups to share what's working out there, and they really build good camaraderie between the teams and organizations. So, I think some of the things that are happening in Illinois, is really, really exciting. I'm hopeful that maybe some other states that are about to, come online, open up the sports arenas themselves. But yeah, I think we all share, we all have a common interest. I mean, we compete on the court of the ice, but we don't compete off the court of the ice. We want, 30 plus healthy businesses in every league that we're a part of. So, it's really important for us to share.
So Eric, now obviously your perspective is you guys want to be in as many states as possible. I get that, but from a partnership, strategic sponsorship standpoint, sort of what's your focus over the next 1.5 to 2 years?
Yeah, again, I think I'll take the question in a little different way. There's three things we're going to be focused on. One is our product. We truly feel product will win out. And so whether it's hiring the right individual, spending the time to build the product, not only the sports betting product, but also the online casino product I mentioned. So that's front and center for us. Secondly is the market access. We want to be in every state we possibly can. There may be a state we overlook or decide not to enter into on day one or on the starting gate for various reasons, but we feel it's a regional business now, but we feel we'll be a truly national player, and that economies of scale with your technology and with a partnership such as NBC or the different league deals that we have, that brings more value when you have that scale. And then lastly is really fine tuning the NBC deal, making sure we're extracting all the possible value. We've only touched the surface in the first, I think it's 42 days of the partnership. They're an equity holder in us already. They have the right to have options up to almost 30% of PointsBet over the course of the term. So we really see that alignment, and that's what we like in the deal. So we're going to spend ample time working on that partnership with Comcast and NBC to extract the value and work as a team to build a bigger and better PointsBet.
Yeah, great stuff. And then Patrick, I'll let you have the final word. Sort of, what do you see in this landscape over the next year and a half to 2 years?
I mean, in the last year, I've really only been covering the industry for, 6 months now. Just how quickly it's evolving, how quickly it's changing, how many new things are fun. New fun things that are happening that are being driven by the teams and the operators. And I think I'm just excited to keep watching and reporting on what these guys are doing.
Yeah, it's an exciting place to be in, that's for sure. All right, well, we're literally right on the hour, so I want to thank all of you for being a part of this panel. I think it was a great discussion. Those attending and listening, we appreciate your time and the great questions. I would encourage everyone to check out sbcevents.com for our info on our other webinars later next week, and then, of course, for the BOSA digital event in early December. So thank you all for joining us, and have a great day. Thank you.